Ellie and Martin are the latest couple in time. During their couple's dance and their wedding reception, Ellie tells Martin she has a feeling that their dreams are going to come through. Things start to move in their favor afterward. They get an apartment and gradually put stuff in order. Martin is an assistant professor in a university, while Danielle is training to be a deputy sheriff. But just when it looks like they'll scale through, Martin loses his job and suggests they move in with Ellie's parents until they stabilize. Danielle's placement interview is still a ray of hope, and she's ready to hold the fort while Martin looks for another job. Chief Deputy Perez gives Ellie terrible news. She passed her tests, but they're overstaffed, and she'll need to wait up to 3 months for a reassessment. It doesn't matter that her father was a first-grade detective. Perez's hands are tied. The young couple is left with no other option than to move in with Ellie's parents. Martin promises that it's only temporary, and Ellie assures him that she understands. Trying times haven't taken away from the love they feel for each other. They arrive at Oasis Canyon, a community for the retired. Carol, Ellie's mom, welcomes them with open arms and shows them to their room. Their only other option is to move to New York to stay with Martin's parents. At breakfast the next day, Clyde comes to visit. He's a friend of Ellie's dad and a retired officer. Now he works for the SST. Ellie learns that the SST works closely with the sheriff's department, and Clyde is willing to show her around. On her first tag-along, she spots Deputy Perez, who's on his way to see SST Commander Chapman. Ellie notes that the SST has a more clean system than the sheriff's department, so Clyde explains that the SST is privately funded. Another fun fact is that Clyde never worked with Ellie's dad. They became friends when he moved into the community. Meanwhile, Martin is still job hunting, letting potential employers know that he's open to relocating. Ellie learns that SST volunteers are more like watchmen. They're not allowed to carry weapons or confront a perpetrator, and are expected to immediately call in when they see a crime in progress. Clyde gets a call, and they rush over to help. An elderly woman has lost her cat, and Ellie finds him not far from the house, much to the woman's relief. She's so grateful, but then mentions she's also missing her jewelry box with her pearls. Ellie and Clyde search everywhere but come up empty-handed. Martin hasn't landed a job yet while Ellie gets introduced to Commander Chapman, a cold and tough woman. Ellie decides she wants to join the SST, standing her ground against Chapman's dismissive attitude. She comes home with the news and has to convince both Martin and her dad that her volunteer work is a way to keep busy and keep learning under the law enforcement department just as she prefers. Gary goes range shooting and Martin tags along, needing space from Carol. He planned to just spectate, but Gary urges him to have a go. Turns out he's a natural, and Gary is impressed. Late at night, something sinister happens. 2 burglars break into a home to steal. They take their spoils to a pawn shop and chuckle over their victory. Gary and Carol are up late, and Gary knows something is on Carol's mind. She wants Gary to tell Ellie everything that she needs to know about being a law enforcer. As if on cue, Ellie shows up and Gary excuses himself. Ellie noticed her dad was moody and asks her mom about it, so Carol explains Gary is having a hard time processing retirement. He loved being an officer and he's grumpy because his career was cut short. Martin wanders toward a garage shop with a help wanted sign. He meets Jeff, who owns and runs the place, and is indeed looking for an extra hand. Meanwhile, Ellie is now an official member of the SST. On their most recent patrol, she's in uniform and behind the wheel, while Clyde cheers her on. The burglars from earlier work for a maintenance company called Cool Breeze, and they've planned for another dirty mission. Martin might be a professor, but he once had a side job working on cars while he was in school. Jeff's son, Tyler, shows up while they're talking. He has a passion for cars, but his dad has a strict rule that to put school first. Ellie and Deputy Perez meet again. She's just concluded her exams for the SST, and Perez admires her zeal to serve her community in any way possible. Tyler cares more about cars than he does about school. Martin offers tutoring if he ever needs it, knowing that his dad's rule still stands. Ellie is recognized as a cadet during the graduation ceremony. Martin, her parents, and even Deputy Perez are there to celebrate her. Unfortunately, Perez still has no update on the sheriff's department job vacancy. Soon after, Martin comes to Ellie with news about a phone interview. The job is in Maine, which startles Ellie. Martin is hoping moving won't pose an issue, and Ellie decides they'll cross that bridge when they get to it. Ellie and Clyde are on night patrol when Ellie's instincts kick in. She notices suspicious activity at a house, figures holding flashlights, prompting Clyde to call the sheriff's department. Despite the rule against interference, Ellie steps out of the car and sees the intruders fleeing the scene. An officer from the sheriff's department comes, and Ellie tries to explain what she saw. The officer brushes her off because there's no sign of breaking and entry, nor did the resident of the house hear or see anything. To make matters worse, Clyde fails to back Ellie up. The next day, Commander Chapman queries Ellie and Clyde. She reiterates what Ellie should already know. SST volunteers are supposed to report, not get involved. Outside her office, Ellie confronts Clyde about leaving her to the wolves, but Clyde claps back that she was out of line. They know the rules. The SST has kept him going since his wife passed on, and he's not looking to have it jeopardized. On the other hand, Tyler gets a good grade thanks to Martin's help. That night, Martin returns home and tells Ellie he has good news. He got the job offer in Maine, meaning they're at the said bridge to be crossed. Over dinner, Ellie expresses that there might be a string of robberies in the neighborhood. She's been doing her research and is strongly convinced about her theory. Gary and her get into an argument about it. Her father mentions he's not happy that Ellie is turning down the opportunity to go to Maine. The argument intensifies between father and daughter, leaving Martin the first to notice Carol's slump. At the hospital, the doctor tells the family that Carol suffered from a mini attack, but she'll recover. Ellie appreciates Martin for his support at a time like this. He reassures her that they're a team, and he's not leaving without her. Clyde and Ellie smoothen things over. He expresses sympathy over Carol's health, and Ellie apologizes for putting him in a bad spot. Mr. Henderson walks by Ned and Sandy, the Cool Breeze employees and burglars, while they're enjoying a cup of coffee. He asks them if they can come over to his place and fix his AC unit. Little does he know that he's their next target. Martin and Tyler continue to build a sturdy relationship. Martin wants Tyler to have even better grades, and in return, he'd teach Tyler something new about fixing cars. Carol and Gary return home from the hospital. She's still recuperating, but she has her family ready to dot around her. Ellie has a shift and Martin is free, so Ellie suggests that Martin tags along on her patrol. It's a good way to spend time together. It's an eventful day for the couple. A resident calls them to report a theft. His credit card has been maxed, and now the card itself is missing. They help him file a claim to start the process of getting his money back. On their way out, Ellie spots a Cool Breeze signpost on the resident's porch, and she learns that the man has been using their services for about 10 years now. He left them a key once, so they could have access to maintenance while he was away. Martin encourages Ellie to talk to Deputy Perez about the robberies. She complains there's a lack of proper communication between the sheriff's department and the SST. Plus, she's already walking on eggshells around Commander Chapman, who must think she's a know-it-all. Ned is getting greedier, but Sandy remains his voice of reason. They're pickpocketing as usual when Mr. Henderson comes knocking, so they hide their spoils and go attend to him. He still needs help with his AC unit and gives them accolades for their hard work in the community. If only he knew. The SST is hosting a fundraiser and Deputy Perez is present. Ellie approaches him with Martin by her side. She starts to share her thoughts on a stronger partnership when Chapman invites herself to the conversation. Ellie remains confident and suggests a liaison officer that improves communication between both entities. But Chapman is condescending. The man whose credit card got maxed approaches the group and mentions he donated because of Ellie's diligence and dedication. He got his money back, and he's grateful. Ellie and Martin feel like teenagers in love, sneaking out of her parents' house for a romantic evening under the stars in the fields. Things might not be rosy for them right now, but they meant their wedding vows, for better or for worse. Tyler gets his first A on a test, making his dad proud. Now that he's aced, it's Martin's turn to keep his end of the bargain. Ellie and Gary have a father-daughter moment. He opens up about what really happened that forced him into retirement. He'd been chasing a suspect, trying to catch them red-handed. An accident happened and the suspect got hurt. Before backup arrived, the suspect got rid of the substances and accused Gary of setting him up. He won the case and Gary was laid off in the guise of retirement. What hurts is that the department failed to have his back. Carol knows, but Gary kept the truth from Ellie because he didn't want to look like a disappointment in her eyes. Martin has tagged along on another shift. Ellie spots the Cool Breeze truck while patrolling and starts to tail it. The truck packs at a familiar resident's place, the woman with the cat whose jewelry box went missing. Ellie gets out of the car and makes her presence known to the suspects. They act innocent in return. Sandy knows Ellie is onto them and wants to pull out, but Ned insists they have to go through with their next robbery. Ellie does some more research and tries to present evidence about the robberies to Chapman. She gets bold, confronting Chapman's cold shoulder toward her. Chapman doesn't budge, keeping up the mean girl act. While Ellie stakes out the suspects, Martin gets a call from Principal Beck, who has news about a job opening. It's a substitute teaching position with the prospect of a promotion by the following year. Martin starts his new job next week, and Ellie is happy for him. She's made no substantial progress with the crimes at hand, but Martin offers a listening ear and support. He ran a background check on Ned and Sandy, and Ellie wants to take it further. Her instincts tell her the crooks will carry out a job that night. She and Martin can tail them, call in, and then get video evidence before officers arrive on scene. They're unaware that Gary has overheard their plans. Things, however, take a wild turn. The culprits take Martin and Ellie hostage. She was calling for backup. They have weapons, but Martin fights back. Gary shows up to assist the good guys, and together they have Ned and Sandy cornered. The police arrive and both Chapman and Perez are on the scene. While Perez is appreciative and impressed, Chapman suspends Ellie for breaking several protocols. After their statement at headquarters, Perez calls Ellie's attention. Perez offers her a full-time position as the liaison officer between the SST and the Sheriff's Department. Ellie accepts the job, and by Monday, Perez introduces her new position to the workers at SST. Her first official act is to introduce them to a recruit to the SST, Gary. Ellie and Chapman smoothen things over. Chapman admits she's let her resentment and emotions get in the way, but she's ready to support their new partnership. Ellie and Martin get a new apartment 20 minutes away from her parents. In the car, Ellie mentions that she's ready to add to their family. Everything is falling into place, she says.